Hello there guys, welcome back to the channel, the Manga Man here, and today we're talking about solo leveling. As you can probably ascertain based on my track record with this, again, I've missed a chapter. It's strange. I started wanting to get consistent at the end of the year. I thought, yeah, I'll start doing that next year, and I've already messed it up. Unfortunately, just life gets in the way sometimes. So this video is a catch-up, so you will see chapter 133 reviewed briefly, and then we'll move on to chapter 134. As always, all links will be left in the comment section below, the description below I should say, to the subreddit, where I will post links to the chapters as well as this video. If you do want to come back to it later on, feel free to pop over and subscribe. I will leave timestamps for each section as well. So without further ado, let's get into this review. So chapter 133, relatively simple. There was a bit of moving about from scene to scene, from location to location, but I get the crux of the chapter. Essentially, we see what's happening in Japan. It's been 2 days. They're basically getting demolished. 31 giants emerged from the gate. In all this time, with all the military action and the powers they've got, only 2 have been eliminated, and there's 1 essentially guarding the gate. The biggest, most barbarian looking one is there with a big old proper manly beard that he is, proper chatty beard, while I guess 28 odd other giants roam and destroy. We then kind of move on to Japan, and we essentially see Sun Jin Woo saying to Jinho that, yeah, I'm going to go to Japan. You know, he's all worried and stuff. I actually like Jinho's character. He isn't the most powerful of characters. He's influential in terms of money earlier on in the story so far. But realistically, he's just a funny character because his main gripe is that essentially Sun Jin Woo's doing all these things, and the one thing he brags about is that he's his vice captain and he's always with him, but he's not had the ability to be with him recently, so he's like, let me be with you at least, even if it is just to carry his stuff. And this is where kind of Sun Jin Woo kind of plays it off, saying, oh, I was joking, I'm not really going. And then we see him eating his meal. It's kind of like a final meal, because he says to his mother that he is going to Japan, or he is going, but he's implying Japan, and he has to get stronger. So ultimately, I like this because if you see double dungeon second match against the architect, and post double dungeon, there is a difference in his thought process, because if you look at pre-dungeon, you can kind of see that he's kind of been overly confident in his abilities, because he's essentially surpassing everybody. There's no markers for him because he's basically stronger than all S-class heroes, you know, to his kind of measuring. Maybe some of the there's probably 1 or 2 that's comparable at that time, but after Jeju Island and everything else, he's not essentially, he's in a world of his own as far as possibilities are concerned. So you can get a bit complacent, and fighting the architect, knowing that he was fighting a doll, knowing that there are going to be stronger enemies out there, has kind of reaffirmed that he needs to get strong, and I like that. So that will hopefully spur him on to become a stronger, more capable hunter. So obviously saying his goodbyes. We have a flashback in the meal where he's kind of talking to Jinho's father and he refuses, and then we see a panel that shows 3 vials, saying that essentially what he's got, this solution, is limited, and I can imagine he's saving that for, although it's his father, for life or death situation where he really wants to save somebody's life. That being said, he refuses him, and then we see him say bye to his sister Jinha, and he leaves a shadow with her that looks a bit like Beru. There are 2 shadows, but it could be representation of just multiple shadows that he's leaving there. You know, they say their farewell as well. He's ultimately compared to his father by his mother, I believe. So it's pretty much the same thing. He's no different. Speaking of his father, we'll hopefully see him soon as well. He hasn't been seen much for a while, other than a few glimpses of him. That being said, we then get, I don't know why it resonates with me, but that final scene when they're walking through the airport just reminds me of, again, this reference might not hit home with anybody or everybody, but There was a music video from a band called Maroon 5. Obviously, a lot of people will know of Maroon 5, but they had a song called Makes Me Wonder, and they do a slow motion walk through at the beginning of the music video through an airport, and it kind of reminded me of that as they're walking through the airport, because they hold a press conference, and it's nothing said, but then you see this slow motion walk, and it's Asian Guild leader, S rank, vice leader, ha ha ha, whatever rank, D rank I think he is, and then that's where it ends. It just reminded me of that song for some reason. I won't add it for editing purposes, because one, I'm horrible at editing, and two, I want to get the habit of not adding copyrighted stuff to my videos. That being said, that is a chapter, and I'll see you in a bit for chapter 134. So, chapter 134. Relatively simple chapter, ends on a very high note, so I did like that. As always, solo leveling is hype as hell. But really, there's 3 sections to it. So, section 1 is really the dynamic entry, we'll call it. So, we're in Japan. We basically see what seems to be like close to a hospital, and there's evacuations taking place, and there's a mention that the giants are coming in their direction. And then there's a discussion of resolve, and the members of the army wanting to stay behind and protect people because they can only evacuate so many people safely, so many patients, and at which point this conversation gets interrupted by a giant who looks like, for all intents and purposes, is going to end them, and then they get stopped, and it's a dynamic, dramatic entry by Sun Jin Woo and the Arjun Guild. And to my surprise, Jin actually does something, or Jinho actually done something. He uses his shield to protect a lady or a man, I believe. Can't tell really. And they basically evacuate with the people, and then the counter attack basically starts, where Sun Jin Woo, with his ability and his dark army, the Monarch's army, it begins to counter attack, and we see them starting. They're basically chewing on them, and they're beating them back, and it all gets exciting. So the counter attack is the beginning. Then we kind of pan away, or we move to a different location. It's a conversation between hunters. They're talking about how Sun Jin Woo didn't get his ability unlocked, and there's limitations to ability. So these people aren't familiar with Sun Jin Woo's ability to grow and get stronger, and his infinite potential. So they're only basing it on the assumption that he's like a normal, what you would consider a normal reawakened hunter, and they basically start betting between themselves and chuckling between themselves that Sun Jin Woo is going to die. One person bets that he's not going to survive 2 days, and that conversation gets interrupted by Thomas Andre, the leader of the Scavenger Guild, who basically says, "I'll bet my guild building that he will survive a day," and that kind of shuts up the conversation. It's even mentioned, he was way to ruin the mood. But we get told that there's essentially going to be a gate break, a portal break in America, USA, in the next day or so. So he says, worry about yourselves, who knows how much of us is going to survive. And just as a reminder, Thomas Andre is a national level hunter. He's kind of one of 5 people that's essentially considered like the top of the top, the upper echelon of powerful hunters in the world, and he's known as the Tank. So it's interesting to take his point of view. How he knows that, we don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's got an ability to sense auras or something along those lines. But I can imagine much similar to the S-Class guild leader that turns into an animal whose name escapes me right now. He sensed him growing and is part of developing as well. So it's interesting to see what he has noticed from Sun Jin Woo, that for him to say that. That being said, we then go back to Japan, where basically the fight continues, and we see Ignis and oh bloody, his name escapes me now. The other character who was a human, who was a A-class shield tank, who gets killed and resurrected, whose name has escaped me right now. But they essentially save a child, and he's all, the tank character's all excited because his power's been upgraded, and he's like, yeah, come on, axe hammered. And it's just funny because he's a dopey character. So His taunt ability was kind of cool earlier on in the story, and the fact that he's still about and still relevant, and Ignis is doing his bit, and I'm sure Beetle is doing his bit somewhere as well, and the whole crew is awesome. But the way it ends is ultimately the best part. It goes, let's get serious, arise. You know essentially what's going to happen. All the giants that get taken down will become part of Sun Jin Woo's army. It's going to be part of the counter attack, where he's now got serious, and we will see him eventually take on the big giant, the biggest giant that is guarding the gate. Ultimately, now that we're told about USA happening in a couple of days, what this leads me to believe is if he essentially low diffs, mid diffs this gate and gets stronger, the next step for him is going to be to go America. And if he isn't after this considered a national class hunter, he will be after he takes care of Japan. But there's going to be a lot of issues with Japan, with that guy still being there as part of that guild, with also the plans to get him over to do with the ruin that essentially they had when they killed the dragon, or essentially is it like the 40th floor, some random floor at the bottom, 24th maybe, in that guild hall. That being said, that is the chapter, so thank you very much if you've got this far. As always, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.